Okay, thank you very much for the invitation. It's really nice to be here. Please tell me if you don't hear me. And yes. And I must say, unfortunately, I'm not really young. We have an office for now 20 years. Yes, it's very nice to be here. I really love Barcelona, and I already had one lecture here, I think, a few years ago. It's really nice to be here. So thanks again for inviting me. Today's lecture is about public buildings because I was asked to do two lectures. One is going to be more about housing, and this one is more about public buildings. Of course, as architects, we try to do all kinds of buildings. I'll try to show and say a few words about our office, about the condition where we work, about the city and the country where we work, because I think it's really important to see let's say the conditions in which you work as something that brings your work out, and it's for us it's a kind of basis for thinking. So this is our studio. That's me and my colleague Vasa a few years ago, and just briefly some of the some of the projects we did in the past. We are working a lot on private houses, a lot on like this, for example, and this you're going to see it's like a three apartment building, and housing projects, and also a lot of we also do a lot of public buildings like libraries, museums, and etc. There is one interesting building here. I'm just showing it as a kind of just one picture. It's a space museum that was built in collaboration with other architects in Slovenia. City of Ljubljana. We spoke briefly about the city before. It's a very small city, 300,000 or 250,000 inhabitants, and it's a mixture of all kinds of identities, all kinds of, I wouldn't say styles, but influences. It has a lot of influences from the region, and we always try to show. We show this map with a circle of 600 kilometers. This is something that you can very easily reach with a car, and actually also shows all the influences the country of Slovenia, which is really small, got in the past, and is getting all the time from Italian, from Austrian influence, of course, from the times of Yugoslavia, and also now from the Southeast Slavic. So it's really a mixture of all kinds of things. It's a country with a lot of greenery, woods. I think it's like one of the most. Is the country with the most forests, or the second one in Europe. And this is the image that we still have in our mind as a kind of tradition, as a kind of picture that we keep in mind, that this is architecture of Slovenia. Unfortunately, the situation is more like this. It's like devastated villages and a lot of really not nicely developed things. So destruction and nature are all around in the urban sprawl in Europe, and of course also in Slovenia. Slovenian identity and Slovenian nationality was always linked to architecture. This is the National Library of Slovenia, which was built in the first half of the previous century by Plečnik, and it was actually a kind of symbol, a kind of it's also a starting point of Slovenian state and Slovenian identity. So that's why it's very important. It's a public building, and when we think and talk about public buildings, I think it's also important to see that they are always in a use and in a function of supporting something bigger, actually, the culture, the identity of certain culture. This is also one building which we like very much. It's also by Plečnik. It's actually a cemetery building, a service building on a cemetery in Ljubljana. We show it, or I show it, because it has all these layers of his influences from different kinds of different periods. And I think this is also visible in Slovenian architecture, all kind of influences getting in one small space. And this is the architecture from socialist times, Edvard Ravnikar, and one architect who I like very much, who did very few buildings, but they were a really kind of hybrid between local conditions or local traditional influences and modernity. It's just a cover about some ruins, and as you can see, it's a very interesting structure, which is at the same time very modern and also very traditional. It fell down like this, but it was already put back, fortunately. I think these days we have to see the role of architect in a bit different way. This is not that we don't work and we don't have an architect as in this classical role that he's the one who decides everything and he's the one who designs everything and he's the main guy. But I think architects are forced now to work in different kind of conditions, and every project, especially big public projects, are influenced by a lot of people, and decisions are not always the decisions that we would take. And sometimes we are more organizers, sometimes we are more collaborators, sometimes we are more people that try to push project in a certain way, and I think this is something that we have to deal with. It's a part of our job. We see buildings not as buildings which are separate from the surrounding. They are part of the surrounding. They change the surrounding, they work with the surrounding, and they have all the time interaction with it. And of course, this interaction, is also, we also observed how it works in the building itself. So at the same time, building works towards the outside and is communicating with the outside, but it's also a kind of small city on the inside. It's an environment, it's a space on the inside which is enables the users to use it in the best possible and also flexible way. This is a painting, Renaissance painting, which shows actually a religious event. But what's interesting, actually, that there is architecture which is behind. It's a kind of frame, a kind of space, and it's always behind. It's actually a background. It's maybe the most important thing, but at the same time, it's also a background. So I like to see architecture also as a kind of frame for life, frame where actually life takes place, and it should be designed and done in the way that it can live for a longer period of time. That means it can accept all kinds of changes. So in a way, it also has to be, it has to have identity, but it also has some kind of neutrality that it can take a life in many different variations. I will show several public buildings that we did or we are working on. I hope it's not too long, so if it's too long, just please tell me. One of the first buildings public buildings that we did, or it's a public, maybe it's not really public, it's a school. It's a faculty of mathematics that we did in Ljubljana, and had a very simple task how to build a building on top of another building, because that was the plot by the that was the case, that we had to do it like this. And for us, it was most important to find out, to discover how this building could communicate with a public space, how can actually be present, and also that user, it means the students, can use it on the inside, but at the same time would have some kind of communication with the outside. So this kind of strange anomaly, like building on another building, can also maybe bring some special identity in the end. So this is the finished building, which was actually finished in early 2000, I think, maybe 2003 or 2004. And this is two of us, much younger. I will continue with, again, just this like a very short explanation of a small, of a project, and then we are going to go to a bit more deep into the project. So this is another project that we did as a competition. We didn't win, we still like it very much. It's a competition for a university building in Antwerp, in Belgium. And what was interesting, that there were just classrooms, nothing else in that building. It was a kind of just kind of hub for the students, but also a space, a learning space, teaching space for them. So just lecture rooms. And the site was like this in a park, and we did it like in a big circle. We took inside existing trees and just tried to make a very clear connection between the social space of the building, of the space, of the students, and with these magnificent trees and park outside. So it was a kind of double meaning. You'd have this very, very private lecture rooms. At the same time, you would have this very open and outside public communal space, which would establish and develop social life of students. And this is how it was from the outside. And now we jump to another city in Belgium, to Brussels, where we're actually building faculty. It's pedagogical faculty in Brussels. It's for the Flemish community, and it's in a very dense space like this in the city. There was really not a lot of space and a lot of program. Really packed streets and packed program, and the big question was how to deal with this, how to establish not just a program, because that was maybe possible to put inside, but how to establish social life of the faculty. So, and it was obvious it cannot be with the space itself, because there was really not a lot of space. No? So there was like one existing building that we kept. It was a storage building, and everything else was then filled with a program, with the classrooms, with the offices, with the big lecture rooms, and a library on the ground floor, and with a lot of communications which were needed. And we did it in a way that actually these communications would become a central element of the school. So rather than having space, we were going for having a kind of web of connections, staircase, ramps, lifts, which connect all this program in a almost in a kind of instrument built around the existing structure, which is here. So this was how it was set in the city, and there was just like one small triangle outside. This is the outside square, the only point where actually the outside life can happen. From the outside, of course, we had to use brick in Belgium. There was no other way. We wanted to have a concrete, but it was too expensive. Glazed ground floor, so you can very openly see what's happening in the faculty. And then lecture spaces. This is the main hall. ground floor with the big lecture rooms filled. This is actually the basement, no? And some rehearsal rooms on the top, and small lecture rooms, and there's a terrace on the top, and the existing building is incorporated in this system of connections and paths which bring together the two buildings. It's very simple. Structure is very simple, just steel structure, and this kind of very, very, let's say, hard and closed outside shell, which is only opened on the side when you go towards the inside of the city block. So the building is actually now being built, but unfortunately I don't have any photos because it's really a building site. As I said, we have several public buildings, not only in Slovenia, but also in other countries like Croatia. This is Zagreb in Croatia. We also have something in Vienna and in Prague. So this is interesting because it's a very big faculty building. It's actually 3 faculties on one side, and which is very strange. You put like 3 different faculties. So it was like geography, geology, and biology. You know? So they just needed new faculties, and they had to put everything together. We won this competition, and now it's in the phase of planning. It's also very strange situation because it's a very steep slope. You don't see it here, but it's like several meters of height difference. And for us, the biggest question was how to these 3. You can also see it in size, not comparable faculties, how you can put them together in one building, but at the same time, each of the faculty would function as its own. It would have its own identity position in the overall scheme. And there is a way to also develop the outside space, especially in this kind of very dense situation, because it was just possible to put one big block on the site. This is the program, and what we did, we did several kind of slabs. 2 are for the biggest faculty. There is one which is for the middle and one for the small. But then everything is connected on the top with one slab, which are actually all the professors. You enter the building, that you go down on the slope. You enter the communal spaces which are shared by all the students. This is actually the first floor, upper floor, and all the communal spaces are on this level, you know, like a library, a cafeteria, and the big halls, big lecture halls. And of course, this kind of big building is more like a system. It's a system. It's a system of parking, system of preparing the structure, which can allow the program changes through time. That means that you can change the laboratories, you can change the lecture rooms, you can change the offices, and it should be done in the way that this can be rearranged many times through the years. So this is this first level with the community spaces, with all the inside communal spaces, and for us maybe the most important one, outside park, which is not just for the faculty but also for the surrounding city, because actually there is nothing like that in that area. And this is a scheme that I was talking before. Actually, you have 3 faculties. This is one, this is second one, this is third one. Then there are all the professors on the top. And there is, of course, another thing, that the dean of the faculty, of the communal faculty, will be once from this faculty, once from this faculty, once from this faculty. That means that actually they're always on the same position. They just move, no? And it will work like this. You see the sections and this cascade park which goes down. Connections for the biggest one of the faculties, and inside spaces. And of course, the final expression will be developed to the technological development of the envelope. And this is how it should look. This is a project that we won last year. Last year in Ljubljana. It's a main theater space, and it's actually renovation of the existing theater. You see, it's completely in the center of Ljubljana. If somebody knows Ljubljana, these are the three bridges, like the central point of the city of Ljubljana. And this is the theater building existing from the 19th century, which was planned for a much smaller city. It was kind of type building that was used in the Austro-Hungarian Empire. So you have this kind of small theater for small cities with a size of 50,000 inhabitants. So it's actually too small, and of course it has many problems because it was never really properly redeveloped. There is like one building in the back, which was added in the 50s, but in very bad condition. So we're changing this in a renovation, in a new renovated, restarted. We said we can restart the building, which, in our opinion, not only restarts the program of the theater with all the additional spaces that are needed, rehearsal spaces, additional theater presentation spaces, but also we are trying to reestablish and restart the public space in front. So for us, it was this front part was as important as what's actually behind, because what is behind is the mostly technical things. And what we're doing that we are adding, renovating a complete square in front, which connects to the city, and we're adding a big box, technical box at the back, and we're also adding under the square a big aula, a big foyer, which will enable that you can go to different new spaces which are in the back box, but at the same time it will connect to existing connections, existing staircases of the old space, so of the old building. So the old building would be completely renovated, nothing would be added inside, just renovated, and the new spaces added underneath and behind. And how it would, the basement, the first level of the basement look like, so like a new foyer with a cafe, with buying tickets, and this is also exhibition space, is for the opening events, and you connect to all the verticals of the existing old building. Of course, you can imagine different kind of things, 24-hour life cycle of this foyer space. This is idea from the competition, how it should look, cafe, and you see the section how you go down. Of course, there is also lift and the ground floor planned with everything put together, and of course upper floor plans with all that's needed in the theater. New rehearsal rooms, and the building, the idea is that the building at the back will be always a kind of background, not more important building than the old building is. So the old building should stay and should keep the presence in the city as it was before. And for the building behind, we had this idea that actually it's not really because you need light, you need glass, that you don't do a glazed building, but you do a building which is covered with a kind of curtain. Of course, there are references to the theater curtains, but this is also a very nice reference to a Plečnik building, and Plečnik did something similar, very close, in a building which is a Philharmonic space. He added a backside technical part with this kind of curtain, and this is, it was a way a reference for us that the new building would be curtained with a curtained facade put behind the old renovated building. Maybe for us, the most important building that we could do would be this project that we also won, but this is already like 8 years ago, and it didn't really move further. It's an addition to Plečnik's library. I mean, it's called addition, although it's not completely the same. It's not here. No? It's a bit further away, but it's in a programmatic sense. It's a building that will work always as a kind of pair with the Plečnik library. This is, I would say, the most famous piece of architecture in Ljubljana, which is here, and the location for the new library is here. So they're going to work together as a kind of pair. Plečnik library, and just few pictures from Plečnik. What was interesting most for us is that, yes, of course, it's very beautiful from the outside, but it also has this feature. It has this magnificent reading room with one big window which connects the reading room to the outside. So it's again something in this big structure that establish the communication to the outside. On the side, there is it's an archaeological site. There is a Roman city just below the. It's a Roman city below city of Ljubljana. So wherever you do something, you get these kind of things. And the goal of the competition was also what to do with this, how to build a building on top of this. No? This is the Roman city, which is below city of Ljubljana. And this is example from Plečnik, how he interpreted Roman ruins. Of course, today nobody would do it like this anymore because he just added something on the top, no? But anyway, it's a question how to do with this. And there's another fact which is interesting, that city of Ljubljana it's a kind of campus city in a way that you have university buildings all around the city. So you don't have a campus situation, but you have university buildings being part of the city. And this library, which is national but also university library, we see it as a part of this network of university buildings. The archaeology, no? And you see Plečnik building, Plečnik library, and the location. And for us, it was actually a question how to start with this. Is it possible to grow a new building out of the old structure, or maybe it's possible to take the geometry and grow in between the old structure to the new building? So what we propose actually is to make a very dense, a kind of box, no, which does not fit to the existing city block, but it has its own position, bigger, thicker, longer, like a big rock put into the city, in a way very similar like Plečnik did, because he just did huge building in the medieval city, and then to use the level of the two Roman streets, kind of Cardo de Cumanus, as a new foyer, new entrance space for the library, which is actually on the level of -2 meters of the existing city level. So you go down, you end up on the level of the library, and in between the old walls, what is left from them. No? So they are mostly foundations. There are no floors anymore. Just these lines that exist in the under the city. So these existing lines, existing walls, they make the geometry of the new library. So that's why it has this slightly awkward geometry. No? And what it forms inside, in the space of the former street, you get vertically organized big reading room, because today's lectures, today's libraries are not so much libraries of the past, but they're more like platforms where people go and communicate, they study, they just talk, they have workshops, etc. So it's not just books, it's something more. So for us, this inner space was the most important. So it's a kind of space, Pyrenean space of different platforms connected and being connecting the levels of the books on both sides. So it's like a shelf with a space in between, and we're also very much interested how we can actually bring the structure of the library as to the level where this structure would form the presence, which would be a design instrument for the library. Again, Plečnik, just some columns. And what we did is actually the new library would be made out of line of columns, kind of wall of columns. And what we also think that usually, especially the big building, it's a problem that with so many new materials, with so many new demands, you lose the meaning of the structure. So that the structure would be visible, this was the idea, from the inside, but also from the outside. So this wall of columns would be actually just cut through with all the insulation and glass, so it would be visible from the inside and from the outside as one and the same thing. So this would be then the appearance of the building. It means it would be a structure, a kind of shelf of books, of events, which is inside with the big window. This is the main reading room, and again with a big presence in the city, but also with the two new squares, two new open public spaces, which are the entrance to the library. At the same time, this is the other one. At the same time, also, this is something that the big program brings and gives back to the city. So we hope that this building would be built someday, but we'll see. And there is another very interesting project for us, also very important in Ljubljana. It's the project for Islamic Religious and Cultural and Religious Center. It's a mosque, plus some other programs. And this is the building here. Again, it was an international competition, very close to the center, but in a kind of abandoned area like this. It's a former railway remise, kind of service space for the railway. And this was the plot, with a very strange shape. Of course, it was a question how to deal with this space. And of course, it was a question in what role a mosque should have in the city of Ljubljana, which is traditionally Catholic, and there are no mosques. Actually, this would be the first, and this is the first mosque in Slovenia. There's one interesting fact that mosque in the past, for example, in the city of Sarajevo, which also has some connection to Ljubljana, they were always used as a kind of seat for the urban development. So you build a mosque, and then all other public programs, but also other structures would go around. So it was not seen so much as a religious building, but also it was seen as a urban element that forms and helps to grow the city. This is the map of Sarajevo. And of course, there is a question how with the idea of Islamic architecture, what to use as a reference. Of course, there are many nice Islamic buildings, but also many which are not, you cannot take as a reference. And there was once a small mosque in Slovenia. It was on the war zone from the First World War, where actually also people from Bosnia were fighting on the Austro-Hungarian side, and they built a small mosque, which is in a very funny hybrid between Islamic influences and Alpine influences. So it's a kind of strange building. And there are some examples from this, you know, but these are some examples from Bosnian architecture. It means for us simple buildings with simple structures, simple materials, simple elements. And this is what we wanted to do. So the idea was to build a mosque as a main element, but then all the other buildings, which are the apartment building, the office building, the small school, library, are gathered around, and they form an urban space, a square, which is not a closed one, but it's something which will belong to the city. So these are the plans. The mosque in the middle, no, with a big public space around. The section, there's a lot of also additional programs, like there's like one gym, restaurant, etc. Rendering from the competition, and this is how it should look. And for the main space of the mosque, we wanted to use very simple contemporary principles, just a box, no? Which will be a light from the top. It would be very light, maybe out of steel, and the dome wouldn't be on the top, but actually hanging inside, almost like a kind of tent. Also, like in a way that very early Muslims were actually using tents for as praying space, and of course, the reference is also to some contemporary art world, like this Dohusu light textile ceiling. Inside of the space, and then development of the outside structure, which idea was to have it as a very simple structure, but in reality it's very complex with a steel structure from the outside with a suspended, not really suspended, with the ceiling, which is actually load-bearing ceiling sitting on the outside structure with the glazing inside, and then the concrete wall, which envelops everything on the ground level. This is the sample that was done during the building, and the space being built. And this is how it was cleaned, and this is actually the inside of the mosque. So just the dome is missing, the textile dome is missing, and the outside it looks like this now. And now the building is being finished. We used very simple materials, just concrete, white concrete, steel, painted white, glass, and wood. And because also stone and wood and these patterns of the kind of shadings are in a way also part of traditional Bosnian architecture. So we in a way try to use that as a contemporary element. Now they're doing the square, the surface in between, just round concrete circles, finished with a gray concrete around, polished. This is a minaret, no, which is separate as a separate element. They're doing floors, concrete floors inside, the wooden windows, and in a way it should be finished like in a half a year, completely finished. And for us, this is a very important project, not just because it's interesting and complex, but I also think it's something which has a great value for the city of Ljubljana and for Slovenia to see that the different culture can be part, and it is part of of society, you know, that actually people that live here, because this is quite a big community of Muslims in Slovenia, they should be part of the public life and of urban space. I think this is a very important thing. Yeah, okay. I think I have 2 projects more. I hope we have time. This is a project that we are doing in Vienna, actually close to Vienna, in the city of Wiener Neustadt. It's Wiener Neustadt means like Vienna new city, no? But it's actually a very old city from the medieval times, and it had a city wall like this, and a big underground space which was used for storing the munitions, storing all the armories, and it was covered with soil, no, in the past. This is the location, and it was the goal of the competition was to renovate this space. That means to uncover it from the soil. You see, they did just like a park with some buildings on the top through the centuries, and to add a new exhibition space which will be used by the city. This is how it looked, the city wall. These are the spaces inside, and this is a situation that was actually should become an entrance to the new spaces, no, to the renovated spaces. And this is how it looked on the top. So nothing. I mean, it was just like a semi industrial things put on the park. The competition was actually calling for putting a new building on the top of this hill, but we said we think this is really strange to do the new building on the top of the existing medieval structure. So we rather propose that we don't do this, but that we first clean everything which was added, which does not have a value of historical value. That means everything that was younger than 18th century was put away. So 16th, 15th, 14th, 13th, 12th century was kept, but everything else was taken away. This is this. All the soil was taken away, and it means cleaned. And then you got this kind of spaces. And what we are putting back is an entrance building, is just a foyer, an infant center, a square in front, and a gallery space behind. And the new and the old structure would be part of this new path, new composition. Rather than have something on the top and then again forgetting what is below, we try to include the existing structure as an integral part of the design. So this is what we get, no? One element, second element, third element, which is the cafe, and the existing structure cleaned and then put back into the on the same level. What you get a new square. You go down to the welcome center, infant center, to the old structure, and then back to the new gallery space, which is behind in the park. This is how you enter. It's just like a big piece of concrete wall, and you go inside. So under this concrete wall, you go into the spaces, and the square, which of course didn't exist before. It's a new thing for the city. It's not just a square we imagine. It can be also used, of course, for the event of opening, but also for every other kinds of events, for Christmas fairs, for summer festivals, for summer cinemas, whatever. You go like this inside, have the just a big double height space. This is the foyer, and then you go through the existing structure where just everything is cleaned. It's just left as it is, and the floor, into the floor, is made a new path, and this new path will be like a path which takes you to the exhibition space on the other side. And there are spaces like this. These were actually the storage spaces, and new gallery space behind, which is contemporary space for uses: gallery, seminars, congress, exhibitions, etc. And again, it can use all kinds of events. And then you go back to the park. And the new building is done, of course, completely different. It's just like a big box closed with a perforated aluminum panels and with skylights on the top. And now just a short walk through. So this is how it was, romantic, but at the same time not without any kind of use. Then everything was cleaned, this new building is being built, like this is the entrance building. Inside you have really interesting spaces, like you really see all the uses that change these spaces to the centuries. And the back, also again, everything is cleaned. The new structure is again put into the soil and being built. Again, we're back to the front side, to this entrance space, which is now almost finished. So it should be open in March. And it's also a very, very quick project, because we started like 1 year and a half ago and should be already finished. So it's really a stressful project. And I would like now to conclude with a very small project that we did a competition. We didn't win it. We still like it very much. It's in a way also a public building, because it's a farewell chapel in a small village close to Ljubljana. And there's existing chapel, which is quite horrible, and they want to put it away, because it's not just horrible, you cannot really use it, it's unusable. You see, with all these steps and things like this. No? So it was a question how to do a simple farewell chapel, because in Slovenia, farewell event it's a kind of gathering on the chapel, on the graveyard, and then you have like a, I don't know how it's here, but then you have some talks and maybe somebody is singing, and then you have a procession which takes you to which goes to the cemetery. No? So this is what we wanted to have to create space for actually this kind of event will be able to take place. And we had a reference. This is a kind of simple structure, again done by Plečnik. I think it's a very beautiful pavilion, because there are just 6 tree trunks and some structure on the top, and simple cover. It's in a way really basic shelter for a space that is done in a very beautiful way. And what we try to do here is actually just to do two big columns and to do one roof on the top, and these 2 big columns would be 2 chapels, because you can have one event here and another one, preparation for another one. This was the program, and a space in front and the park which collects everything. The situation, the 2 columns with the 2 spaces, and the space in between, which is the space for the event, which is usually outside in Slovenia, and this is how it looks. 2 columns, 2 spaces, round spaces with a inside chapel and the outside covered square in a way. And the roof, it's in a way just kind of textile thing put on the top of the wooden of the wooden beams, like this. And this is concrete, and this is what. So it's actually just 2 or 3 materials, and that's it. And again, we are back to this image, which I like very much, because for me, building is in a way, of course, something that should have a presence, but at the same time should also be just a background, just a frame for life to take place. Thank you.